The Berlin winter didn't just bite, it chewed. It was 3 in the morning in Kreuzberg, that liminal hour when the techno clubs had swallowed the tourists and the streets belonged to the ghosts and the foxes. Elias adjusted the respirator mask over his face, shaking the can of Montana Black spray paint. The rattle of the mixing ball inside echoed like a gunshot in the empty alleyway. He was freezing, but the wall in front of him was begging for color. It was an ugly slab of gray concrete behind a Turkish kebab shop, stained with decades of pollution. Ideally, Elias would paint a phoenix, something rising. God knows he needed the metaphor. He hissed the first line of crimson onto the stone. Psst. The sound didn't come from the can. Elias froze. He pulled his headphones down around his neck. Hello? Silence. Just the distant hum of the U-Bahn train rattling beneath the pavement. He shook his head. Lack of sleep. Too much caffeine. He pressed the cap again. Psst. Look. This time, the whisper was distinct. It sounded like dry leaves scraping against pavement, and it came from the wall. Elias stepped back, his heart hammering against his ribs. He shone his phone's flashlight onto the concrete. To the left of his fresh red line, there was an old piece of graffiti. It was a simple stencil of a crying girl, faded by years of rain, probably painted by some unknown artist back in the 90s. As Elias watched, the girl blinked. It wasn't a hallucination. The black paint shifted, sliding across the rough texture of the stone like oil on water. The girl's painted hand, previously covering her mouth, slowly lowered. Her mouth opened. No sound came out, but a cloud of painted breath materialized on the wall. The spray paint fog formed letters. H-E-L-P. Elias dropped his spray can. It clattered loudly, rolling into a puddle. What the hell? He whispered. The paint moved again. The girl's face contorted, morphing. The features stretched and reassembled until they formed a new face. A face Elias recognized instantly. It was Marcus. Marcus Vandal, the most famous street artist in East Berlin. Elias's mentor. Marcus had been missing for 2 weeks. The police said he probably skipped town to avoid debt collectors. The face on the wall looked terrified. The eyes, 2 splashes of white and black, darted frantically left and right. Then, the neck of the portrait split open. A jagged line of red paint trickled down. Elias touched the wall. The paint was cold, but it vibrated under his fingertips, humming with a low, impossible energy. Marcus? Elias asked, his voice trembling. Is that you? The portrait nodded. The paint shifted again, forming an arrow pointing north, towards the old, abandoned brewery near the river. Elias didn't think. He grabbed his backpack and ran. He moved through the city like a shadow, guided by the art. It wasn't just the mural in the alley. As he ran past a bus stop, the poster of a smiling model shifted, her eyes following him, her hand raising to point the way. A tag on a dumpster uncoiled like a snake, slithering towards the river. The city was awake. The city was guiding him. He arrived at the old brewery, a skeletal brick monster looming over the Spree River. It was fenced off, marked for demolition to make way for luxury condos. Elias squeezed through a gap in the fence. The silence here was heavy, oppressive. Show me, Elias whispered to a graffiti tag on a rusted beam. The tag, a neon green skull, shifted its jaw. It looked down at the basement hatch. Elias descended into the dark. The air smelled of mold and fresh chemicals. He turned on his flashlight. The basement was a makeshift studio. Canvases were stacked against the walls. And in the center of the room, tied to a chair, was a man. It wasn't Marcus. It was a man in a tailored suit, unconscious. Next to him stood a figure holding a gun. The figure turned. It was Kale, a rival artist, a sellout who had started working for the real estate developers. Elias, Kyle said, not lowering the gun. You shouldn't have come. The walls talk too much, don't they? Where is Marcus? Elias demanded. Kyle laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. Marcus refused to sell the warehouse. The developers, they pay well. I tried to convince him. Things got out of hand. Cale pointed the gun at the floor. Elias looked down. Under the layers of dust, the concrete floor was stained, not with paint, with dried blood. He's part of the foundation now, Cale sneered. Literally. Cale raised the gun towards Elias. I can't let you leave, kid. Art requires sacrifice. Elias backed away, hitting the wall behind him. The wall was covered in a massive, unfinished mural Marcus had been working on. A giant, roaring lion. You think you can hide this? Elias shouted, his hand pressing against the painted lion behind him. The city knows. The city saw you. The city is concrete and brick, Kyle yelled, his finger tightening on the trigger. It doesn't care! But he was wrong. Elias felt heat radiate from the wall behind him. A low growl vibrated through his spine. It wasn't a sound wave, it was a seismic shift. The spray paint on the wall exploded with light. The lion didn't just move, it lunged. A two-dimensional claw of neon yellow and black paint detached itself from the wall, swiping through the three-dimensional air. Kyle screamed as the paint struck him, blinding him, wrapping around him like a liquid straitjacket. The entire basement erupted. Every tag, every doodle, every splash of color on the walls peeled off. They swarmed Kyle like a flock of angry birds. Elias watched in awe as the essence of the city, the rage, the art, the sorrow, consumed the killer. The paint bound Cale's hands, covered his eyes, filled his mouth with the taste of acrylics. Cale dropped the gun, clawing at his face, suffocating in a rainbow of toxic sludge. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The art had called them too. As Cale lay unconscious, wrapped in a cocoon of